Okay, let's try that again. Just start. Still running. Okay. Hello and welcome to American Amnesia. I am your host, Cliff Garner. I'm going to start off looking at a few books that I've been kind of reading on, well, actually a couple of them I'm reading, and a couple that are kind of just on my radar at the moment. And One, two, three, go. Hello, and welcome to American Amnesia. This is Cliff Garner, your host, and I'm looking at some books that I've been reading. There's a couple of them here that I have been reading. The first one is this one here. It's The Atheist Who Didn't Exist. It's by Andy Bannister. It has a nice foreword by Ravi Zacharias. It's a really witty and well done book on fallacies from atheists and bad arguments from atheists. Not that every argument is a bad argument, but it does go into some of the worst of them. And it's well done. It's funny. It's enjoyable. For a little more serious reading, I'm reading this, The History of the Caribbean. It's by Frank Moya Pons. I'm not familiar with him really, but this is actually very interesting. It's a very serious history of the some good demographics, by the way, on the early history of the Caribbean. I haven't gotten much further, and probably, I don't know, depending on my mood, I might not finish it, but I definitely want to read about the time leading up to at least the pirates of the Caribbean, and the development of the islands, and how they politically were part of the world. I mean, there's a lot of questions I have on that, and it's an area and time period even in that area that I don't know about. So I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of digging into it. And they deal with going all the way back to Columbus. It's actually pretty interesting. Not badly written. A lot of demographic stuff in it, and economics, but that's part of the fascination, really. It really, you have to kind of think of that area in that time period, 14, 15, 1600s in the Americas, as a very developmental time for many things, including the slave trade. A lot of information on that. So it's been an interesting read so far. And then a couple others. Now those two I got at Barnes & Noble, I know for sure. This one here, I haven't really touched it yet, but it's on my radar, and so I'm bringing it up here for you to look at. You can see it's called Manners, Customs, and Dress During the Middle Ages During the Renaissance Period by Paul Lacroix, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And this is the kind of thing that I would probably not necessarily read from cover to cover. I'd probably get a pretty fair amount of it read just by picking around and finding little things that are interesting, and then kind of jump things that don't interest me, and then maybe even do some research in that direction. Another one, and that one I probably got from Barnes & Noble. I think it was fact, I think it was a half-price one. And this one, I think I got from a Christian bookstore. And this is the Greco-Roman World of the New Testament Era, exploring the background of early Christianity. And this is a thing that I do find extremely fascinating. It's by a guy named James S. Jeffers. I'm not familiar with him, but I have several books on this particular topic. What Christians and Pagans, I think it's one of the more better known ones. I'm also periodically picking up another one called Pagans that I started reading a little while back, and I put it down and I pick it up and read a few chapter or so, and then put it back down. And it deals with the same era. And this is a time period that I find rather interesting too. It's just the end of the classical era and the rise of the medieval is one of my particular areas of study that I just really can't seem to leave alone. But yeah, that's a cool picture, isn't it? And then we have this one. I got this one. Definitely got this one at one of the Goodwills, I think it was. And Sex and History by Rie Tannehill. I think that's pronouncing her name right. And it looks like the world in a tarot deck, doesn't it? A very strange picture here. It looks like possibly Venus or something. And there's a connection from here beaming out onto these guys out here. Really kind of a weird kind of thing. I don't know if it is an ancient picture. I can't seem to find anything in the credits on here, but that's that's pretty funny, really. You can see there's little rays kind of shooting out from her crotch. That's just not right. But anyway, that's it could be a modern satirical kind of thing. I don't know. I'd have to look it up for sure. Supposedly she wrote a book called Food and History, which is also kind of intriguing. One of my favorite books is a book called The History of Food. I don't remember the author's name, but she's a French writer and just wrote a lovely book on food and where things came from, and some of the mythology, even stuff involving food. It was really pretty cool. But we'll see what this is about. I don't know how seriously I'll take it. I'm sure I'll read certain parts with more interest than others. But it's good to have resources like this sitting around. And there's this one here. I didn't pick this up too long ago, about a month ago. This also at one of the Goodwills, I think. It might have been Salvation Army. I think it was Goodwill though. And the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Arthurian Legends. That's a period of, or a style of study that I'm really particularly big on. I'm not so much on the modern adaptations. I really don't care for most of those. And a lot of the revisionism that's gone into it also I find rather actually repugnant. Some of it's interesting. I mean, especially when you get into the historical Arthur, some of it gets pretty good. This is by a guy, I think it's a guy, Ronan Coughlin. Of course, it's got a nice cover on it. And that's one of the, what do they call them? The kind of a neo romantic kind of art form. I can't think of it now. Anyway, I do like that type of art. What was his name? Dante Alighieri Jones or some crap, who did his own version of La Vita Nuova. At any rate, this is something else. I'll just kind of thumb through it. I probably won't read it from cover to cover. Not a whole lot of point in it. I picked it up just out of the blue. A lot of these things like this I'll just pass over, but couldn't pass over Arthurian thing there. It was just a little too tempting, and I do love that artwork. What is that called? It's I can't think. At any rate, rain goes dead sometimes, and it has on that. At any rate, I just wanted to go over a few things over that, and kind of make some notes on some of the things that have been going on lately with this violent protest, which I find rather detestable. It's there's no call for that kind of violence. There really isn't, and of course people are excusing it because they're wanting to get at Trump for some reason, and it just gets ridiculous. That whole mentality of the left is taken. I had one guy get on my case and say, "Well, I thought you didn't like socialists." Like, excuse me? My particular stance is not socialistic. I'm an ex-socialist, but I understand why people become socialists, especially when they're young. It tends to sound idealistic, and there's some things about it that aren't so bad. I do believe that the welfare state is actually basically a good thing. Although it definitely needs to be tinkered with, and some of the worst abuses need to be removed, but I basically don't have too much problem with it. There's a philosophical argument of taxation as being at the point of a gun. And I understand that. I became a libertarian for a reason, but I have some problems with that argument. I don't really see it that way. I don't have a problem with making society more humane at some level by what we call the social safety net. So the safety net for social purposes, and that doesn't bother me too much. And not only that, the money that's been taken by the government in Social Security was done under a set of agreements, and these agreements are not being fulfilled. That is not right. That they should be fulfilled, or they should just quit taking our damn money. Very simply. See, that's one of the biggest problems with Obamacare. And when I look at the way things were done in Turkey, when I lived there for 6.5 years, I really had no complaints about the healthcare system there at all. And what Mr. Erdogan did was actually quite good. He cut the costs. He addressed the costs. He made sure that, even if you were dirt poor, you could afford it. And if you worked and you paid taxes, you were in the system because they plugged you directly into Social Security. Well, I think the reason why the U.S. made such a big deal about making it an insurance bill, single payer, multiplier, employer paying, or whatever, I mean, this just It was all silliness, and it was a distraction from the real problem being cost. The fact is that in order to address the costs, there should be basically two things. If there's to be a public I don't want to say mandate, because it really doesn't need to be a mandate. Actually, what they did with the mandate was that they created a shifting floor that was reinforced by deceptive language. And what they did in effect was they would call what they are calling a subsidy, in which the government pays a certain amount for people who can't afford it, on the insurance, mind you, is that that this is a subsidy. Well, the subsidy is paid for by taxes coming from other people. And one of the groups of people that they're counting on to pay the tax are the people that are not getting in the system, one way or another. And those people are being penalized by a tax. And they define it that way, as a tax, not at the beginning. Because at the beginning, they're potentially going to receive a subsidy, potentially. So this shifting between the ideas here occurs in time, and as it gets closer to tax time, the more you hear it being talked as a tax. And it depends on what they're talking to you about. If they're talking about renewing you, then they're talking about your subsidy. See, that's how they got away with it, and not only that, they created this argument that you could not sue the government because of what they did, and what a lot of people don't get here, and this is one of the things that happened to me, because I kind of tend to fall through the cracks one way or another, and I did the very first year of it. Was that when I fell through the cracks, they were going to charge me the full amount of the insurance program that I was signed up for, and it was fairly expensive, and I was getting quite a bit in subsidies. So, at first it was like, okay, this is cool, I can see where this might work, and I was withholding judgment on it, which I did with Obama at the very beginning, and I did again with this. But they tripped up something in the system. I don't know what even happened, but they wanted to charge me for a full month, and it's like, well, I can't afford that. And what you did here, I object to. So I had a formal protest, and I had a formal case going into it. And I was trying to bring my insurance agent into the case on that. And they were, dragging their feet on letting her come in. I don't think they wanted her to see what they were doing. And this is one of the problems from the initial beginning, is that they would keep the insurance agent from being part of the process. And by doing that, they put you, the individual taxpayer and the individual consumer of the product they're forcing you to buy, they were putting you directly in the way of the government that's just moving along like a speeding train. And when push comes to shove, you have nobody in the way that has a stake in the issue to protect you. So you're dealing with the force of the state without any of the comfort of having somebody to represent you. Now they have a means of letting that person in, but they weren't really keen on letting her in, and she never heard back for it ever, actually. But I told her about what happened to me later on. I got a call from them demanding that I pay for I think it was 3 months after I had protested and all this, and nothing had come of it. And so there were several months that went on, and the insurance company notified me that if I didn't pay for that old bill that caused the protest, they'd have to drop me. And it's like, well, drop me. I don't mind. I can't afford that. They wanted $500 or something. I don't even remember how much it was. I couldn't afford that. And I was paying like around $100 or something as it was, which was too high. And so they were cool about it and all. And I got a call from the government, and they're demanding that I pay for it. And not only that, not just that, but I had to pay for 3 months, $1,500 plus. I told them they're out of their bloody minds. They were more concerned about keeping me in the system so that they could keep their own little insurance scam down. That's not right. Screw them. That's what I told them on the phone. Like, drop me, and then they said, well, we're going to have to penalize you now. Oh, love me. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Just kick me while I'm down, will you? And I told them I was going to get a lawyer. I never heard back from them on it. They dropped the whole matter. Still penalized me on it. But, whatever. I mean, they're thieves. There's no getting around that. They're a bunch of thieves. So at any rate, what happens is if you don't have, if they decide they want to scalp you for a little bit, they're going to do it. And you're at their mercy. They just decided they didn't want to mess with any beyond that. I signed up really early last year. And I got a good deal, and but it's one of those things. I knew that underneath of those numbers was always this conflation that could always take a life of its own. That behind the lower amount I was personally paying, because I don't make enough money. Thank you, Illinois economics. Thank you, Illinois government. Thank you, Mr. Madigan. Wonderful job you've been doing, jerk. But underlying that was always the possibility that they would foist a heavier fine upon me in the form of me actually having to pay for the actual insurance policy that I was getting, that I was forced to take. Thank you. And that it could always turn into something really ugly. And then, of course, this year arrived, and the whole thing has fallen apart terribly. And I'm glad to say that it looks like at least the mandate has been removed. I'm kind of sitting around without insurance now, but the thing is that I'm not leaving a bill for several $100s on everybody else that I'm paying as I go to my doctor. And it's high. I mean, but it's at the same time a reasonably comprehensible payment number, and I'm paying my full price for my medication. And with the generics, it turns out it's not as bad as it was. I was paying a lot higher when I had to pay for the full price on everything without the generics. When that was the case, I was getting really stiffed, but the prices dropped to a reasonable point now. I'm still paying more than I did in Turkey, but it's not that bad, and I'm not as much of a burden on the rest of the public now, which I felt bad enough about that I had to do that. The fact is, this needs to be redone, and I do recommend that that when the Trump administration and the Republicans and hopefully the Democrats will be smart enough to get in on the process, that they'll allow more competition between the insurance companies, that they will increase the number of doctors as opposed to decreasing them. That's one of the biggest mistakes that the Obama administration made, was driving more doctors out of the business. That was stupid. That was a very bad move. But instead, to stimulate more young people to become doctors, this should be the case. We need young, talented people to come in and to flood the market, and that'll bring down costs. Castro did that. Come on now, Castro did that. Wake up, people. Let's go beyond this political pseudo-ideology that just doesn't really go anywhere. Start doing something that makes sense. And do things to hold down the costs. Bring down the costs. And control that. And that's where it needs to go. Some of that, this stuff with the insurance, that's because of the trial lawyers and the amount of money they can make out of lawsuits and stuff. There needs to be an addressing of that issue too. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to put caps on it, but if that's what they have to do, maybe that's time. Because there's just been too much money made out of this. It's been too much of a cash bonanza. But we do need more doctors, and we need more good ones, not bad ones. So at any rate, the whole Obamacare thing, I'll need to do one really on a detailed and written account that I've got, because I can go into a lot of detail on this, and it was just really frustrating and good grief, it rose my blood pressure. I mean, dealing with the government was not good. And they were so, the people there were helpful. Don't get me wrong. There was, I don't have anything against the people that were doing the job there. They're working people like the rest of us. But by the same token, there's no excuse for the laws that underlay the whole process that was just so poorly executed. There was no excuse for it. None whatsoever. It could have been so much better done. When I was in Turkey, I was plugged into the Social Security system, which we should have done here, but they wouldn't do that because they've spent the money. You do know that, right? But at any rate, the thing is that through the Social Security system, which I think that's what the idea was originally with even creating it. In fact, I think Truman's idea was to plug through the Social Security system, and that way that everybody was kind of taken care of through their taxes. That would have been a good start, but they won't do that because there would need to be an accounting of the Social Security system and the money that they supposedly had in that lockbox of the Social Security. And that has been a crime against the people that's been going on for quite a while now. And I think it's about time that we have that addressed. But at any rate, what happened with the Turkish system is that when it was put through there, and he addressed the costs, and basically he had a schedule on just about everything. You know, how much it would cost to do this, how much it cost to do that, if it was out of pocket, if it was covered, what was covered, what was not. You know, all this stuff was on a schedule. And if you went in while you had a problem, you know, that hadn't become an aggravated problem, it was generally handled by the state, and they would take care of it. If you had a problem that you'd let it go for, you know, a little bit of time. I had my legs swell up, for example, and it was from actually from sleeping while sitting up instead of laying down. And I was a little worried about it because you know, it could have been blood clotting, and so I didn't go in right away because I didn't have the time. But when I went in, I had to pay that out of pocket, and what I paid out of pocket was quite reasonable. It was, good grief. I mean, if it would be like about, I think it was like 50 lira, you know, that I had to pay the doctor straight up. And then I had to pay, I don't know, 30 something lira for my x-rays on that. And that was reasonable. And the same thing when I had a sprained ankle. As soon as I had it sprained, I went to the doctor at the emergency room, and they checked it out, and they had me do x-rays. I had to pay for the x-rays, but the diagnosis stuff, that was actually paid for because I was using the emergency room. So there were things that were done there, and it was reasonable. It was very reasonable, and I have nothing but good things to say about the healthcare there, although you will hear me talk a lot about some very bad things that went on account of Mr. Erdogan's rule. But that was not one of the problems. That was one of the good things he did, and it was actually exemplary, and it should be a model for us to look at. Another thing was the pharmaceuticals, and they were extremely cheap. And I didn't even go with the using my numbers from my Social Security to enable myself with a discount, because I could have gotten it even cheaper. I just didn't want to go through the hassles on that. So and it was extremely reasonable. I was paying probably less than $10 US a month for my pharmaceuticals. So things like that, you know, are very important, and we should look into that. I was going to talk about something else, but I guess I've gotten off the track far enough and gotten involved in something else. I do plan to do a more of a kind of a formal kind of thing on Obamacare and the problems I had with it, and but I want to have it written down so that I do this detailed accounting of what transpired and all. So at any rate, I did digress and got way off course, but I think you'll find it interesting. So until next time, this is Cliff Garner and American Amnesia. Take care. We'll talk to you very soon. Bye.